All right, welcome to an overview video for your participants section. So you will find that the participant section is located a little bit earlier in your chapter 4. Hopefully by now, at the time of writing this, you have recruited your participants and you might even be somewhere in your do phase, and we're just going backwards. And now that you've kind of done everything, you have some content to write. You have some content to write up. So purpose of this section is to provide readers with a clear understanding of who actually participated in your PDSA cycle implementation, moving from the general stakeholder descriptions that you had in chapter 3 to the specific individuals who engage with your change idea. So if you recall, back in chapter 3, you had a section of stakeholder engagement. You talked about, in general, who some of your stakeholders were, and some of these might have been your organizational colleagues who helped you with your stakeholder discussions. Some of them are also theoretical, like maybe you're working at a school and students are some of your stakeholders and teachers are some of your stakeholders. But here, for your actual implementation, your PDSA cycle, you might have recruited specific students or specific teachers to be your actual participants for the PDSA cycle. So that's who we're talking about here. We're getting really specific to who did you recruit in your plan phase, who are you actually working with in your do phase. These are the people that we're calling your participants. This section establishes the human context for your implementation and helps readers interpret your findings. It's always helpful when we have a sense of what our results or findings are from the study of where did this data come from? Who did we source this data from? The length of this section will vary. It's probably going to be 5 or more paragraphs plus a participant summary table. Sometimes that might depend on how many different groups of participants you have. If I'm in a school and I have student participants and teacher participants and parent participants and admin participants, I might have 4 different groups. But I might have a change idea where I only have 1 group of participants. Maybe I'm just working with faculty members, or I'm just working with new hires within their first 3 years, right? So everybody's section will be a little different. Content overview, the actual stuff. You're describing your actual participants, explaining your recruitment process. How did you recruit these participants? And you'll present a summary table of your participant characteristics. So these kind of general information about each of your participants. Tone and approach, use past tense. You will always be describing what actually happened, so always use past tense. Write descriptively and appreciatively about your participants, maintain first-person narrative, and protect participant anonymity while providing meaningful context. If this sounds like a little bit of deja vu, I used this section as an example in your chapter 4 guidebook overview video, zoomed out view, but here we'll get into a little bit more detail. So, organization strategy and guiding questions. Here's how you want to organize this section. Use these guiding questions to do that. Make sure that you include all necessary details. And I have a caution here of avoid writing in a call and response manner. So although I'm giving you guiding questions, it doesn't mean that you just read the question and then just start writing and you don't organize your ideas or craft your paragraphs with the main topic sentence and a linking sentiment, right? Remembering the meal plan. You should still be artfully crafting your responses to these questions. Some answers to the guiding questions you might be able to combine in one paragraph. Some of them might need their own distinct paragraphs. Again, that's where you need to use some of your own critical thinking. Craft your paragraphs carefully. Make sure you have a narrative flow and there's some descriptions and appropriate transitions between the main ideas. Okay, so for this section, we have, participants is a level 1 heading, right? So that means that the next subsections of this section in the chapter should be level 2 headings, which is what we see here. So you need to, and this is APA 7 style, you should never have 2 headings at different levels back to back. There always needs to be content in between. So we cannot have a level 1 heading with no writing underneath it, no paragraph writing underneath it, and then a level 2 heading. That can't exist. We have to have, that's just how the style wants. We have to have something in between the headings. So you have a participants heading, level 1, right? Participants, level 1 heading. Start with a brief introduction paragraph that sets up the purpose of the section and with a roadmap statement that maps out the following subsections. That can be a very brief paragraph. I recommend writing this last. Write this last, because what some students do if they write it first, they put a bunch of details up in here And then when it actually gets to the sections where they should have those details, they either repeat themselves and get repetitive, or they're like, I already talked about it, so what do I do? It's like, no, the details go down here. This is a brief intro. We're just trying to satisfy APA 7s by having a little like overview, right? So your first level 2 heading should be titled Participant Overview and Characteristics. This is probably going to be 2, 3, or more paragraphs, all depending. Here are some of the guiding questions. Who actually participated in your PDSA cycle implementation? What were the key demographic or contextual characteristics relevant to your problem of practice? How many participants were involved and in which phases of your cycle? Especially if they might have had phases of the cycle could mean like do phase or study phase, but there might have been, based on how your do phase and your change idea was, maybe you have this kind of multifaceted change idea, and different participants might have participated in training or the actual like intervention or thing. So again, everybody will be a little different there. How many participants were involved? Oh, I already said that. What roles did participants hold in relation to your organizational context? This is like they're almost like their demographic information, their characteristics. If you have multiple groups of participants, consider organizing each group by paragraphs. So you're talking about the different types of participants by paragraph and organizing it that way versus like how many. Like the paragraph shouldn't be how many, and you tell how many students and how many teachers and how many admins. It's like talk all about your students first, and then talk all about your teacher participants and all about your admin participants, etc. Okay. Then you have a section on recruitment and selection process. So this is where you tell your readers how you recruited your participants. So how did you recruit them? What criteria guided your participant selection? Sometimes we have specific criteria as to who we reached out to, or if we are working with a pool of participants, how we kind of sorted through those participants and selected them. So kind of your selection criteria. How did you approach potential participants and secure their involvement? So this could have been like, how did you reach out to them? We'll talk about their consent procedures will be in a different section, but it's, securing their involvement. And then what ethical considerations shaped your recruitment approach? We'll talk a little bit more deeply about ethical considerations and lots of things later, but you can incorporate that here, like just as brief little moment about how you considered that with recruitment and selection. Then I want you to include a participant summary table. This is where, might be chatting, you might be describing your participants in detail in narrative form and paragraph form here, but it is so helpful to see a summary table. And I imagine that you have read academic articles or, empirical research that have a participant section and have a table that describes all the participants. And how helpful is that to have a table that summarizes a lot of this information that you can kind of skim through and get a sense of the participants, get a sense of the population, right? So you'll create table 4 point whatever. I don't know what table this might be in your chapter. And maybe one thing I do is sometimes I'll leave all my table numbers table 4 point whatever until the very last, until I'm kind of done with my chapter, and then I'll go back and number them. Because if I decide to add a table somewhere, then I probably need to readjust all the subsequent numbers, and that can be laborious. So sometimes I'll just be pretty general, but with this understanding of, as I'm finalizing this chapter, I'll go back and add those numbers in. Make sure that you include a narrative introduction to the table somewhere in the body of your text. You're going to hear coaching from this. You should never, ever, ever, ever have a figure or table that's just plopped into your chapter without any reference to it in the narrative body of your work. Readers need to know what that is. You want to think of holding the reader's hand. So you can put your table in there, but somewhere in probably the paragraph before it, hopefully before our eyes get to that table in the document, you've said something about table 4.4 summarizes all of my participants and includes information like X, Y, and Z. That's all you need. Something that tells us what that table's about, that points our attention to it. Okay. There's a note here that you can present this information at the end of either subsection. You can present it at the end of recruitment and selection, or you can include at the end of participant overview and characteristics. So where you choose to put it is essentially up to you. See what feels best and the kind of narrative flow. There's not a right or wrong way. Your chair might have some suggestions as to where it might be best, but you make that decision first and then let your chair respond with some feedback as to actually I think it would be better at the end of the other section. Okay. Use the sample tables below to guide you. We'll get to those in just a moment. Detail level, specific information about numbers, roles, relevant characteristics without compromising anonymity. So don't use first and last names, use some descriptors. Enough contextual detail that readers understand your participants' relationships to problem practice and their capacity that they engaged. Avoid over-identifying information such as specific names, exact titles, or details that could compromise confidentiality. Now, if you're in a small organization and there's only one human resources person and you say human resources representative, people in your organization are going to know probably who that person is. And that's okay. Like there's a sense of understanding that when we're working participatory and we're working within organizations, people are going to know what it is. So it doesn't have to be super anonymous, but you do just want to be mindful that this is going to be published. Your dissertation might likely be published for anybody to read. And so you want to be careful there. You can also go back to your participants and say, hey, here's how I'm referring to you. Is that okay? And let them decide like, yes, I like being referred to as human resources representative. That's great. If they want pseudonyms, you can also include pseudonyms. Writing tips, use general descriptors such as like classroom teacher, department supervisor, right? Include relevant demographic information only as it relates to the problem of practice. Okay. So I know like lots of demographic information might be race, might be gender, might be age. But if that's not relevant to your problem of practice, then don't include it. It can just be distracting. Include helpful information. It could be that gender and it could be that race is important to understand in terms of like who your participants were. Then include it. But if it's not and it's distracting and it has nothing related to your problem of practice, then don't include it. So just because we have that term demographic doesn't mean that you need to have their resume and where they graduated from college or high school in there, right? So use that, consider this demographic information wisely, like what's really important for your problem of practice. And some of be transparent about any recruitment challenges or participant changes. So sometimes participants will drop out or you need to recruit more, like be clear about that. You might have had 12 participants for part 1, but then 3 dropped out and you had 9 participants for part 2. You might describe why they dropped out. 1 dropped out because they moved, the other 2 dropped out based on interest. Like just be transparent and be honest. Connect participant characteristics, your problem practice context, introduce your summary table, clear narrative statement, ensure your table follows APA formatting. Guidelines for tables, that includes having a table number, bold, a table title on the next line, not bold and italicized, and that your table meets kind of the style guidelines, which are usually like these horizontal lines, but no vertical lines, so there's some style aspects to it. Remember that this section sets up the human context for the implementation phases that follow. Your participants are human beings. Okay, so treat them as such, write about them as such. They are not subjects, they are people. Now, back to the sample participant summary tables. I have several sample tables here. These are not meant to be rigid tables that you must include or incorporate. These are meant to be examples that demonstrate how you can summarize information, how skimmable they should be. We don't want paragraphs in our tables. We want blurbs and things that our brain can easily pick up on and scan. So here are just some different examples. These are all fictional participants. Each table is a little different, so take a look at how the tables differ, and you need to decide what type of table is going to be best for me and my study and conveying my participants. So here's a sample table of professional development participants, mathematics instructional coaching program. And again, see how this is a nice helpful title. It's a descriptive title and it's telling me who the participants were. So we have participant role. Notice these are general descriptors, number of participants, maybe their years of experience. So this is representing the mean, right? M usually represents mean. Maybe I don't know if there's a note. Sometimes down in the note we'll say M equals mean. But if there are 8 participants, they range from 3 to 15 years. That can be really helpful. Grade levels taught, previous coaching experiences, 2 had previous math coaching, phases of involvement. Maybe they're involved in the plan, do in the study phase. Okay. And so here you can get a sense of, like who made up this coaching program, right? This mathematics instructional coaching program. Okay. So here's one example. Here's the note. Note, all participants volunteered for the program and completed informed consent. Experience ranges reflect total years in education. 2 participants withdrew during the due phase due to personal circumstances and are not included in the final count. So this is where, in this fictional idea, like this is where we indicated that 2 people withdrew. Here's another sample table: mentorship program participants, youth leadership initiative, participant role and numbers. So here's where this table had participant role and a whole column of numbers. In this table, they're kind of combined into one column. So that's another way we can communicate information. Youth mentees, there were 12 of them. Adult mentors, there were 8. Program coordinators are 2, etc. Demographics, right? Here's where we might use a range. We might use percentages. Again, things that might have been really helpful, like 58% were first generation college bound. That might be helpful for this mentorship program, youth leadership initiative, based on the problem of practice. Their program history and availability, right? And I'm not sure why availability isn't here, but it's probably likely because it's important to understand in the context of their problem of practice, in the context of their PDSA cycle. So, here's their note: all youth participants required parental consent. Demographic information collected voluntarily through self-report. Community partners rotated based on availability and did not participate in all phases. Like, it's a helpful note, right? And very difficult to maybe convey in the table, but it's helpful to understand it in a note. Here's another example: new higher retention initiative participants. Participant role, number of participants, their department or division. We can see here, like, number of participants, 15, department division, 6 were in sales, 5 were in operations, 4 were in marketing, to get a total of 15. Their tenure with organization, how long they've been with the organization, employment status. So that's one way of describing that table. Let's see if this note has, they were recruited from 3 different hiring cohorts. Exiting participants were contacted via email and phone with a 58% response rate. And again, there's more details in that note. So you're getting a sense of like what a table can include and what a note can include. I think this might be the last one. Here we have participant role and department, like putting those 2 together in one column. Their gender, maybe their gender is important. Years of experience, and their improvement initiative. So here we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 participants versus maybe other projects that had more participants. Again, that's all okay. And here's a way we can kind of delineate or describe different aspects of summarizing our participants. Yep, and then there's a note there. So these are, again, sample tables that you can incorporate for participants. If you need help formatting these, usually what I do, since I'm sharing my screen, if I click on the table in table design, you want to find the table design that has these horizontal rows left, right, which is the top row. It'll bold the top row and it'll bold the first column. So you just want to keep the top row bold. That's fine for APA 7th, but everything else is unbolded. You can also, if there's a table in here that you like, you can copy this table and paste it in your chapter. Tables are usually single space, but do change it to Times New Roman 12. I think right here it's Calibri. But you can copy and paste things as you need to if that's helpful. If you find something that you want to add or subtract or modify, it is highly likely that you are modifying these. Don't just pick one of these and make it work. You must modify it for your context, for your study. So hopefully that gives you some examples of your participant summary table. If you have any questions, reach out to your dissertation chair. And again, always use this guidebook to guide you.